Morning.
Hey, great. Welcome. We've got Sarah and Anais, who are these beautiful women that I connected with quite a few years ago now. Is it 2021, 2020?
20 maybe, yeah.
Yeah. A few years back. First of all, meeting Sarah with Anais' daughter, Ayla, at a festival. And I just remember, it was a little mini festival, but I just remember seeing her and just thinking, how sparkly this woman with these children, grown-up children was, and then later hearing Ayla's story and connecting with both of you through drum making. So it was this whole weaving and winding, and then finding out that both of you have an interest in shamanic practices and herbs and plants and natural healing. And of course, Anais, you supported your daughter Ayla through natural and allopathic healing on her journey. Um, should we launch into that? Do you want to talk about how it was being a parent of a child that gets that diagnosis? Let's start from the beginning.
Um, yeah, I mean it was just a complete life changer. Like everything just crumbled, all the sort of normal reality just crumbled when I heard those words. And in fact, actually, when I walked in the room on with when Ayla was diagnosed,
Hang on, your sound's gone.
I misheard it and I heard it's good news rather than it's not good news. Which was interesting. I think I was just one of those like few more milliseconds more of just normal reality.
And how old was Ayla?
Ayla was 15, and it was during lockdown. It was the summer of 2020, and she did a lot of dance in school, and the year before she'd got quite a lot of knee pain in her other knee from doing knee slides and everything, and just assumed that it was something like that. And then over lockdown, it didn't. With dancing stopped, it didn't pass, and her knee kind of swelled up quite a lot. So we had it checked out. Uh, it took a while actually because it was during lockdown. We went to you had some Zooms with a physio who after a while said, "Oh, it's not really improving," and sort of thought the swelling was a bit weird. So I had to phone the doctor and ask for an X-ray. And it was when we went to the doctors, they were all in hazmat suits, and it was all just sort of very alien and weird.
Same. It was really weird time to be ill.
It was a weird time. And then the doctor gave her an X-ray, and as soon as I stepped in the door after the X-ray, the hospital phoned, and I thought there's something wrong here, and they wanted more tests. Uh, yeah, and then it just kind of like it was hard to catch my breath. It was just one thing after the other, and it was a rush. Suddenly everything moved really quickly. The chemo, and then her amputation, and then they said it wasn't working because the nodules, the cancer spread to her lungs, and they tried more chemotherapy, but it didn't work. So they just said there's nothing more to be done. So she's got 5 years. So that all happened within. She was diagnosed in July, and then by November, we were given a terminal diagnosis. She was given a terminal diagnosis.
Wow. So were you guys living together at that time?
Yeah.
How important was having that support and having that, some just, I mean, I call them like your cancer doula, your mate or your person who's on the same page as you, who gets you and gets what you're going through. I mean, my sense is that Sarah was that person for you.
Yeah, totally, and really supportive with all the decisions because I've always been really anti chemotherapy, and suddenly I just had this real feeling that it was the right thing to do initially to try, and Sarah was really supportive with that, and very helpful at kind of talking to the doctors on the phone. My brain wasn't thinking rationally, it was hard to remember things. Like you say in your book, it's really important to have someone there at the meetings, just to take notes or ask those questions that you've completely forgotten about. So yeah, that was really, really, she was really supportive through those times.
Yeah. And so with I mean, obviously because of Ayla's age, you know, you there's no choice of doing anything other than what the hospitals and the doctors tell you to do. I've seen other people go through cancer with their children, and so most people I know, they're packing in the green juices and all the healing modalities alongside all the allopathic stuff. So presumably Sarah was a very wise woman in those respects and kind of was supporting you, you know, finding things. So, you know, what other things did you do for Ayla?
We did a lot of juicing, and high dose vitamin C, the turmeric and resveratrol, isn't it? During her chemotherapy, she was quite sick, so it was hard to get any of that stuff down. But what we did do is a lot of THC pessaries. So for a while, I was smuggling them into the hospital in kids' ward in this little box, putting them in the freezer and kind of bringing them out. At sort of times when nurses wouldn't see, to give her those. And I think that really helped with pain relief for her during the chemotherapy sessions.
Yeah.
What else were
Oxygen.
we were doing oxygen, that was later. But yeah, alongside the chemotherapy, we were
Keto diet, no
keto,
sugar.
yeah, no sugar, carbs. That was the first thing we cut out, actually, the day after she was diagnosed. Cut all of that out.
How was that for her? Because I mean, obviously she was old enough to understand completely what was going on, and kind of, was she totally involved in all of those decisions and on board with them? Did she rebel?
She was, well, the diet she was really on board with. I think it was something, a friend of ours, Ben, who's really good at mushrooms, he kind of, and he's really into keto diets, he kind of, like, he's a chef, he went through it all with her, so she kind of trusted him with that. And yeah. So she was really behind the diet. I think it was things like, you talk about that in your book, like things that make you feel like you've got control, a small amount of control, and she knew about the sugar and the carbs. It was things that she could be in charge of, and also she was really enjoyed telling people the things that she was learning. She loved kind of speaking about that. What she did rebel against was the THC. That was quite hard, because I felt that, you know, there's so many good results from using it, and I really felt it was one thing that could really help. And we were doing, after she'd stopped all allopathic treatments, we were doing that every 4 hours, and but then it started to become this battle, and she'd forget to do it, and I'd start getting angry with her, and it was just one day I was just like, we've got to just stop doing this. This is just not helping her healing. And really talked to her, and she just said, I just don't like being stoned all the time, and she was feeling quite scared by it and kind of seeing things. I think she was a bit young for it. So we decided to stop that. Yeah.
And
To give her autonomy, really.
Yeah.
I think that was quite important, that she started leading it, because she wouldn't take the Chinese herbs either, and that was challenging to me, because I just started studying Chinese herbs, and I knew, you know, I was working with top cancer people who were saying, you know, this is really important, but it wasn't the time, and we introduced them later, and then she really grew to love them.
Yeah. I think straight after the chemotherapy, she was just very delicate, and everything made her feel sick, and kind of, you know, so we had to just really find a lot of like liquid supplements. She couldn't even swallow pills without being sick and things. So it did make us kind of look around and really hone. And it was important for her to make that decision herself. Like she relaxed once she stopped taking the THC, and kind of that I trusted her body. I think that was important for her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things when you're looking into the kind of natural stuff. I mean, it's a minefield out there, isn't it? There's so many books and so many things, and this works for this person and this works for this person. I remember watching all the truth about cancer videos and just kind of coming, I had to stop after a while, because I was just like, so if one person heals from eating liver and one person heals from doing nothing and just enjoying their lives, or there was a guy, wasn't there, who he reckoned he healed himself just watching comedies and laughing, and it's just like, that's where you kind of realize you have to find your own way. And I think being, as like you were saying, kind of supporting her in her decisions, and also that if not being a stress, you don't want to have a battle, you don't want things to become stressful, because we know that stress exasperates everything. So it's learning such a fine line, isn't it, and kind of finding our way when we don't want to just totally or totally accept what the doctors are saying either. So I mean, how was it for you, Sarah, a sort of supporting friend and watching, I mean, I know Ayla was friends with your children, and
more than friends, really, Rachel. Like I caught Ayla when she was born. I was the doula. We lived in a community, Coed Hills, and we brought our children up as if they were brothers and sisters. It was a much closer relationship than just friends, really. And I'd watched her grow, and I felt a massive responsibility to kind of be the clear guide and the navigator through this whole process, and and keep things positive. And the minute we had the diagnosis, we did change a lot of things instantly, didn't we? We went on to kind of this, we went quite high in a way, very I don't know, we instantly were like, okay, we need help, we need to go back. And we had a kind of quite difficult relationship with the fathers of our children, and it hadn't been close anyway, and suddenly it was like, right, we can't do this anymore, we need help. We'd maybe been kind of slightly isolated on a mountain, and we were like, we can't do this, we've got to. The next day we went to Coed, and we gathered about 30 people that we hadn't really spoken to much, and we just said, come on, this is a group activity, this is a group healing that we need to do. There's something, if a child is sick, there's something wrong with the whole dynamic, and that's one that we all had to work through at first. Was like, God, I was a bit rude about people who were ill beforehand. It's like, well, what's your issue? And it was a big thing to kind of say, okay, where am I at fault? Where is this situation at fault? And also then having to say, okay, this is in the hands of the gods as well, and forgive ourselves and do the best that we can. So there's so many layers, and that's what you say in your book, isn't it? It's not just food, it's not just, it's a spiritual thing, it's a physical thing, it's all weaved together. And the community did come through, really, didn't they? There was a lot of help and support, and people coming forward with healings and chiropractor work and sacred work and medicine work. It all weaved in.
And it's interesting, I watched Gabor Mate interviewing, I think he was interviewing Eve Enslow, and he was talking about how in tribal situations, when someone gets really sick, the tribe thank them for taking that on behalf of the tribe, and it is a village healing,
Yeah.
And so that's really beautiful that you had that sense of like, we need to go back and we need to call everyone in. Did you feel really supported by that?
Yeah, it was really beautiful. I can see it now. We all sat out in the grass, and there was about 30 of us, and we all did like a chain of massage, this huge circle, and it felt like a lovely sort of coming home of sort of a community we'd left behind a bit, and there'd been bitterness and things happened, but it kind of felt like that Ayla's diagnosis had sort of blasted through all of that. And also meeting new people who'd been involved in Ayla's childhood that I'd never met before. because she'd been with her dad and I hadn't been involved in that side. All these other people that I didn't know about who really cared about Ayla, was yeah, lovely to discover. And a lot of people stepped up, brought us food, yeah, offered us healings, and Ayla, and yeah, it was just finding this whole new tribe, was really amazing.
That's beautiful, because you hear the opposite. You hear some people who, especially if they're choosing to do what, you know, everyone thinks they should do, they end up kind of isolated in their choices. So it's really beautiful that, you know, you were able to pull that in. So did you feel that you were getting support as well? Because often it's all the focus goes on the person who's got cancer. And no one really thinks about the family members and how it feels for them and how it, you know, how it must be for them. So it sounds like you were getting support too.
I did feel, yeah, I was definitely getting support too. And then I think Sarah suggested that I kind of have at least one afternoon a week where I'm just away from Ayla, and just little things like that just really helped, and to know that she was being looked after. And because it felt a bit, you know, she was 15, but it felt like suddenly having a newborn baby again. I just didn't want to leave her side. I just wanted to be there every moment, and really wanted to try and, you know, I'd say it to her, like, I'd like to take it for you. You know, I think that's a mother, you really have that primal urge. So it was quite hard to leave her. You know, sometimes I had to be dragged to go off and do something else. But I did feel I could come back a bit more renewed. Yeah, and I started therapy as well, which really helped.
And then having to let her go as well, like the weekend I met her with Sarah at this little festival. I mean, I was just, you know, I knew nothing about her, but I was just blown away by this young woman with one leg dancing her socks off, you know. And they had this crazy obstacle course for a laugh, you know. It was like, you know, for the people who were camping over, it was like in the morning, this, you know, comedian doing a obstacle, and she was just there giving it a go. It was just like, wow, you know, I was just looking at this young woman going, look at her, she's full of life, she's not letting anything stop her, you know. And I know later, you know, she went to boarding school, and, you know, so how was that for you? Because you know, you just spoke about her being almost like wanting to be with her all the time, and then obviously, you know, she needs to live her life.
Yeah, that was really hard because she'd been given, you know, a 5-year terminal diagnosis, but I just knew she needed to discover life for herself. And I was hoping, you know, a lot the healing would come from her feeling that she could live her life fully. Because before she went to boarding school, she just went for like a 2-week trial. I didn't think she would stay. Part of me was hoping she wouldn't. Before that, she wasn't taking a bath alone. I was with her, helping her with everything. And suddenly she threw in, and every time I went to visit her, she was doing a new thing on her own. I was kind of like pandering to her. She said, no, I can do this by myself, which was fantastic, because that's why I wanted her to see that even with one leg, you can live not necessarily a normal life, but just as a full life, as anyone else. And I think she was discovering that and redoing her, you know, doing her A levels and doing things that she really inspired her.
It's amazing.
So
We had this sense that, you know, because we were hippies or whatever, or we were doing the green juices, that, you know, 5 years isn't really 5 years, it might be 10, you know, that it felt, once we'd stopped the chemo and they said there's nothing else that can be done. Actually, we asked, didn't we? And the doctors were really good. That's what I wanted to say, is that, you know, with midwifery and stuff, they're like, oh no, you can't do this, you can't do that. But with this, the doctors were so on our side. And I was really surprised by that. I was expecting a fight, and I was always expecting to kind of have the right information and have done loads of research. But they really, yeah, I maybe they knew that she didn't have long, and that there wasn't much hope in a sense. So they allowed us a lot of autonomy, really.
Ayla really made that decision, because they did offer, on the second diagnosis, they said you can have some even stronger chemotherapy, but it won't save you. It will just give you another couple of years. And she just said, no, I'm fed up with that. I don't want to feel sick anymore. And that really came from her. She just blurted out before anyone else had a chance to say anything, and that felt good. So the girl, the woman you saw there, had that kind of like vigor that she'd made that decision for herself. And they also offered a lot of trials and different things, but once we researched them, I mean, they sounded just as bad as chemotherapy, if not worse.
Interesting, isn't it? Because they have these things, they go, well, it would prolong your life, or, you know, give you a better quality of life. And it's like, well, how does it if you're just sick, if you just feel really ill from what they're giving you? It just is like, I mean, I think she made the right choice. I thought, you know, I think it's a difficult choice, but to actually go, I'm just going to really enjoy my life. I'm going to throw myself into life and feel well, you know.
And actually, that was the process afterwards. After the chemo stopped, was she really found herself. She became such a wise human being. Like, it was a joy to watch this process of just, you know, the understanding. She kind of had a whole life in those few years of growing older, and, you know, the wisdom and the amount of kind of support and you know, therapy and different things that she'd gone through. She was really, you know, it was a joy to spend time with her. And also she had this, our thing was to find joy. That was, you know, you had a meditation about it, didn't you, where there was this joy factory, and she it was all about what is your bliss, where can you find that. So we did a GoFundMe, was it in 2021 or something, on the winter solstice, and it did amazingly well. And she wrote this beautiful thing about how she wanted to travel the world and swim with sharks and all these funny things that she wanted to do. Because it was COVID, she couldn't do bloody any of them. We didn't go anywhere. And you took her on a trip to Totnes, and it was really exhausting, you know, wheeling her around in a wheelchair. And we realized actually, like, traveling the world isn't where it's at. It's not, you know, it's not the answer. It's inside. So actually, then what she really wanted was a normal life, making, you know, how do you make friends? How do you find a boyfriend? You know, all these things, teenage things. And so that boarding school, which was a Krishnamurti place, it was a very interesting place. Was ideal, although it was, you know, it was hard. But then you had a rest as well, and I think your nervous system calmed down, and so did mine.
So is it okay to sort of talk a little bit about so when I realized that you had been on the same Zoom as me with Sophie Savage, you know, what was really playing on Ayla's mind was her death at that point. And I remember just watching the pair of you and just thinking, you know, for one, she was really brave to join this. Was it the Out of the Maze session or something?
It was like a 2-day, a weekend kind of session.
I mean, and it was about facing fear, wasn't it? And you know, I just remember, absolutely sobbing my eyes out, being so moved by all the things that she shared, and her biggest concern was leaving you. And I think that is the thing, isn't it? It's like death, you know, death's just another initiation. It's us letting go of our bodies, but what is really emotional and the grief is leaving those we love. You know, that was the only thing that kind of, you know, I was just like, yeah, I could die now, but I don't actually want to leave my children, and I don't want to leave my life. And, you know, that's what keeps us here, isn't it? So, you know, before doing that work, I mean, had you both talked about death?
No, not in that way. That was quite new to me that she did that, and maybe felt so held within that community of people that she was able to, you know, that really blasted something open for both of us. And I didn't realize she felt this real sort of guilt. And later she did talk about that she felt that if she did die, that she'd have ruined my life, and all of these quite intense, you know, feelings that she was having. So yeah, that Sophie Savage session really opened that discussion up. And then later she did talk about it. I think she thought about it a lot more than she admitted. I remember her having one plant medicine, and she kind of came out of it. Doesn't matter. We're all we're all atoms, we're all part of the universe. It doesn't matter if I live or die. And I remember at the time going, no, you've got to live. Like, what are you talking about? But yeah, I think she'd found that kind of within herself, and definitely towards the end. I mean, she was shocked when she realised she only had a few weeks left to live, obviously. But very quickly, she just put so many things in place. She planned her whole funeral. She kind of told people what to do. You know, she put things in place for her little sister, for her best friends to kind of like adopt her as a sister, and all of these lovely things that
it was so wise.
It was so wise, but it also so helpful for us. Like, I just remember just feeling so grateful at her funeral. Like, we all knew what we were meant to do, even though a lot of them actually wanted a glass coffin, which was like almost impossible to do. But the community, the guys just put it together, this beautiful glass coffin. It just so helped everyone with their grief, and still does, that she thought about us afterwards, and kind of you know, it was helpful for her as well, I think. But
it's another place where you can almost have a bit of control, isn't it, of like, well, that, you know, this is what I'm planning. And you know, I've had so many different conversations, or tried to, like, you know, a friend of mine who passed away, she absolutely refused to have that conversation. And I was just like, what about your drum? Do you want to be buried with your drum? What do you want to happen to your drum? She was just kind of going, I don't know, I don't care, I won't be here, you know. And it was just kind of like, but it's really helpful for those that are left to know,
yeah,
what do we do with this stuff? Or, you know, how do we celebrate you? What would you like? And you know, and in the end, you know, in those situations, you just have to muddle through and hope you've done the best. But I think that was really beautiful that she, you know, it is like Sarah said, really wise, really wise.
really wise. Yeah,
Are you up for talking a bit about those last few weeks?
yeah, yeah.
So wait, where were you? You were, were you at your mum's?
Yeah, so I'd moved to London, and it was, if we go back a little bit, sort of October time, Ayla got a flu, and everyone in the school had got this flu. And I was fed up with her just being kind of ill in her room, so I just said, I'll come and pick you up, and you'll recover at home and whatever. And before that, the last scan had shown that her tumours were growing a little bit, but quite slowly. So we kind of felt, like Sarah said, we had kind of, you know, 10 years or something, you know, some divine intervention would happen. And I brought her home from this flu, and she just wasn't getting better. It wasn't clear, and she had moments when I thought she'd go back to school.
And I came to visit her at that point, and I hadn't seen her for a few months because she'd been at school, and she'd gone to Portugal with her friends, like on an aeroplane by herself, you know, and had a brilliant summer. And she was like, Sarah, I'm really tired. And I was like, Ayla, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. Like, if you feel like you don't want to fight anymore, she's just like, I can't, you know. She had a kind of false leg that she had to go weekly to physiotherapy. It was hard work. And looking back, maybe I was comparing her to like all these army people who don't have cancer. They have one leg, but they just, you know, they're like running. It's like, Ayla, you could be running. But you know, looking back, maybe it was like she didn't actually have that much physical strength to do this. And she was just like, Sarah, I don't know, you know, is it bad though? I mean, am I failing? Like, just to kind of give up. And it was like, no, Bells, if you want to do it, you're going to have a beautiful time. You're going to come back in your next body with 2 legs. Like, it's not a failure at all. Like, really, really trust your instincts on this one. And yeah. And then I had a moment. I went home and I was crying and crying, and about my inability to heal her. Like, I felt really personally responsible for like fixing her. And I just let it go. And I was just like, okay, maybe this journey wasn't about that. Maybe it was about surrender, and maybe her death is the healing, because it's, you know, it has done so much healing with all of our tribe, brought us all together and inspired us both. You know, we really changed our lives, you know, because we'd had another death, and we were in bereavement before even Ayla got ill. And we were down, and we did actually say, okay, come on, we're shamans, we're priestesses, we're healers. This is, you know, so that moment of surrender in me, of just like, okay, it's not my responsibility. I released the responsibility of fixing her. And Nacy phoned that minute. The minute I said that, she phoned, said Ayla's in hospital. She'd been taken into A&E. Like, it was really powerful, very quick transformation. And then from that moment on, it was like, I don't know, what was that, like the 20th of December or something?
Yeah, the 19th, I think. And first of all, they found a blood clot, and then, yeah, it kind of just escalated. But I remember I phoned Sarah and Sophie, who's Ayla's stepmom, and it was 11 o'clock at night or something, and they all arrived at 2 in the morning to the hospital, and the hospital staff was so lovely and just allowed, like,
they let 9 of us
nine
in.
people in, all around her bedroom, singing Christmas carols, and you know, she was so excited because all the other times she'd been in hospital was during COVID, so it'd only ever been me and her, you know, no one else was ever allowed to visit. So this was very magic.
Yeah, we sang Silent Night around her bed, and it was just, yeah. But I think we knew it would, you know, she just had a blood clot, but actually they said if you move, you could die at any second. Like, so it had this real, like, whoa.
Yeah, that was tricky because I had to sort of, I think she had that wisdom and she sort of knew, but I had to just try and say to her, yeah, you're not allowed to get out of bed for a wee. But without it being this dramatic, I felt if she suddenly felt she could die any moment, that she'd be so stressed, that would be counterintuitive.
And then that process, that was a snowball process as well. Like, every day there was hundreds of people coming to visit her, wasn't there? And the doctors kept on, like, going around the house. They weren't quite saying it, were they? But there was this moment where she had a scan, and the tumor had filled the whole of her lung.
Wow.
And that was an incredible moment of, like, wow, you're not even really going to leave this hospital. It was.
But again, because it was a few days before Christmas, and Ayla just said she wanted to go home for Christmas, so the amazing palliative care team put together a bed at my mum's and kind of got everything ready, as well as my family kind of getting everything ready, and the whole of Wales felt like it had come to London and was staying in my mum's house and kind of working things out. And
we had a party then it was just like singing. We were just singing all day. And she
was well enough to sit up, and she wanted her cats, so we brought her cats some friends brought her cats from
Wales, from the mountain all the way to London.
Yeah, and there was like a week and a half of her being kind of able to sit up and speak to everyone, and people coming over and playing games, and loads of her friends came and did loads of art, and so you feel she had time to say goodbye to everyone. She spent time alone with certain people.
She gave everyone private messages, didn't she? And we went to a psychic very early on in the situation, and they said, oh, she died in battle or something. She'd lost a leg, and that she died suddenly and shockingly. And I think the psychic said something like, in this lifetime, you're choosing how you die and you're curating it. It's your party.
Oh,
and that, yeah. And she did, you know, she got to choose everything, you know. It was her vision, her creation, and we were there to support it. And yeah, it was such a beautiful. And then in the night times, the night times were difficult. We had Joe Dispenza meditations. And all I remember is the oxygen machine is, I think it was filling the house. It felt like a cathedral at night. But in our sleep, we were kind of talking, because she was up every hour and she was kind of fidgety and uncomfortable and breathing was difficult. But we were going to this incredible place, and then she started talking about there's a train coming. Am I meant to get on this train? Like, are you coming with me? There's these people here. Do we need to? I mean, what do we do with these people? How do I die? And so we were collectively almost meditating this process of like, I kept dreaming I was taking her up these steps towards heaven, like walking her up there, and then I was like, I can't stay here, Ayla. I've got to come back down. And
I mean, I'd just sort of done a psychopomp course a few months before, and I really felt the presence of Michael and Gabriel were kind of there at each end of her bed. I just kept calling into them, and she was asking some questions like that. And it was, it's hard to talk about, but it was. I think I was very reassuring and just able to just talk her through those moments where she wasn't sure and she kind of got this fear. I suppose because we knew the outcome, we knew there wasn't any, saving her at that point. It felt like a sort of reverse birthing her almost. I mean, I couldn't leave her side that whole time. Obviously, she wanted some private conversations with certain people, but I couldn't leave the house. I just felt like this. It needed this sacred kind of cocoonment, like this nest.
You had a very strong knowing, I think, at that point. Like, you knew what to do. It was a really intuitive. It was like birth. It was like you almost weren't there. It was hard to talk to you. Like on a practical level.
Oh yeah, I couldn't do anything practical. Actually, everyone in my family, Sarah and Sophie, would go and talk to the doctors because there was all the drugs plans and all of that. And I was just like, very early on, I was like, I can't be at these meetings because they go on, they waffle on for hours. And I wanted to be by Ayla's side. And also I couldn't take on that information. I think I was, in that spirit world with her.
Yeah, you were the bridge, I think. And then the nights got increasingly intense, and then on the last night we were waking and sleeping, and then you woke up very early and went for a wee, and you could hear that her breathing was nearly stopping, and then you came back in and we were both with her.
I'd spoken to a friend in America before who'd lost a daughter, and I think it was a Buddhist practice. She explained that people often want you to sort of step away when they actually die, and it so happened that I went for a wee. It was like her last few breaths, and her cats were kind of around my feet, and I was like, oh, she'd want me to feed them, so I quickly fed them, and as I came back, then she was having her last few breaths. It's something about kind of needing to just be alone in those last little moments.
Yeah, there's lots of stories of that. I know so many people, you're by the bedside, day in, day out, and as soon as you go for a pee or you go to get a cup of tea, or, I mean, we had the same with my dad. He was in hospital and we all left, and then we get the call, come back, and go back and gone.
I think they find it easier without the, because
it's our entanglement, isn't it? Almost keeping them. It's like, because no one wants someone to die, do they? So that's in the field. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was really beautiful, really powerful. That's conscious death, isn't it? And for her to, be so wise at that age to know what she needed to do, and to follow that, her, all of you following your intuition and following that inner guidance, and, being at home and all the things that, not everybody gets to choose those things. So thank you so much. And I know that, you know, it must be really painful to sort of go back to remembering all of that, because it's not that long for you, is it?
No, it's just over a year. Yeah, actually, I've been doing EDMR, and that's really helped me look at the little magical, beautiful moments. Like I remember in hospital, she just wanted shredded wheat. She hadn't been off carbs for so long. She really wanted shredded wheat. So I went out and got it for her, and she was just like, oh, we're eating. You know, she was really had this way of the smallest little things would be like, oh my God, just delicious. And also, I think a few days before she died, I changed her sheets, and she was just like, oh my God, that just feels so nice. Even joy in those tiny little things. It was amazing how she could, feel those.
And that's what it becomes about. I mean, I remember when I was having my chemotherapy, you know, it's just like I can't even get off the sofa, but I can still find the moments of magic or joy, or just, you know, the little things that keep you going. You know, it's what keeps us going, isn't it? Yeah. So I mean, you know, that story that you two have both woven, it just sounds like, you know, in some respects, Ayla's life touched a lot of people. You know, you were talking about, you were both in grief, having had a death before all of this. So you almost got to kick up the backside of like, pull yourself together. This is the next thing you've got to deal with. You know, it sounds like there was a lot of layers of healing for yourselves and other people, because I think that's one of the things when a child gets an illness like cancer, you know, people really rile against it, don't they? It's like, it's not fair. Why a child? Why, you know, especially, you know, babies, and you know, trying to almost work out what the reason is, you know. And I've, as someone, you know, on the outside, I can look in and just go, well, it's created beautiful connections and healing, and you know, all these different things. You know, are you able to kind of hold on to those little gifts, like you just spoke about, those magical moments of like, you know, having almost like making sense of what happened for you and your lives with Ayla?
It's starting to, yeah. I definitely can see the positives in it, and obviously I'd do anything to go back and you know, have her back. But yeah, and the guilt, I think the guilt is lessening, because it was for a long time I was kind of searching for the reason. And one example is, God, I gave her Rice Krispies, too many Rice Krispies when she was younger, and that's why she's got cancer, you know. Yeah, kind of searching for a reason, and I feel I'm able to hold on, to not feel the guilt so much. I do have moments of it. But yeah, that's passing.
And I think there's a dance, isn't there? You know, what I feel is there was this thing about being super positive, like you can change your reality, Joe Dispenza, and holding the death at the same time. It's like, it's okay to die, you know, it's part of the process. And the same thing with this. It's really shit what happened, and it's fucking unfair, but it's also a really beautiful experience, and we've learned from it, and we're humans having a human experience, and this is probably one of the most intense things that may ever happen to us. Who knows what happens next? But yeah, those things can be held simultaneously. It's not one or the other. But the only fucking way to do it is to raise it up, really, because otherwise you get bitter and you just you waste a life, really, and there's no point wasting your life.
Yeah, it's good to acknowledge I think early on I did a medicine and because before that I hadn't even looked at the possibility of her dying. I was kind of like, she's going to heal, she's going to, you know, read Radical Remission. It's like, but I just think of her healing, and then I actually looked at her dying. But I felt like if I looked at her dying, that would be me kind of, you know, manifesting that. Is that balance, isn't it? Kind of like having the dualism without, you know, falling into one or the other, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, like even if you think about the death, you're infecting yourself with it, and you're creating it.
But it really released something to actually just look at the possibility that she could die. It opened up more discussion with me and her, and yeah, less pressure on her that she had to live.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something very powerful about, like, the mentor that I had, she called it making friends with death, and it is that. It's like, oh no, if I even think about death, I'm opening that up. It's like I'm creating that portal, and those of us who kind of live in that world of manifestation and visualization and the power of the mind, that's the opposite of what we want to be doing. And I remember having a conversation with one of the doctors at Penny Broad, and he just went, you didn't create the cancer in your body, it's not your fault. Because that's what, we think, well, I've created this, like, I ate too many Rice Krispies as a child, or or there's trauma, or where looking, digging, looking for that story, when actually it's just like, what, get your head out of your ass and start living. It's like, and death can walk alongside us, because death walks alongside all of us. None of us know what we've got. And I think that was one of the massive lessons of 2020 for the world, was just like, can we walk alongside death? Can we be okay with it? And it's such a taboo subject. No one wants to talk about it. I mean, now I think it's more in the open. There were death cafes and all those kind of things. It's like, planning your funerals before you're dying doesn't mean you're dying. It's like thinking about these things beforehand, having, there are people who I've seen who've had cancer who have a funeral party while they're still alive. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it sounds like she almost got to have that, with all the family being around her at Christmas and playing games. And it's just like, celebrate. That's, that's all we can do in life, is keep celebrating, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, definitely.
I love that. I love that bit in your book where you go to the natural burial place and you're witnessing, God, this is where my body will rest. And yeah, it's really powerful.
So let's round it up a little bit. Are there any last parting words that you might want to share? I mean, I sort of, I'm particularly thinking really, for parents and, those of us who are supporting people who are going through this. It's kind of like, how, and people say to me, I don't know how you did it. And you just go, well, you just put one foot in front of the other. It's like, you just put one foot in front of the other. That's all we can do. But I don't know if if you've got anything you'd like to offer.
Yeah, for people who are supporting others with cancer, sometimes I didn't want to be asked like what I need. It's helpful sometimes. It's sometimes just turning up with a big stew or a bowl of soup or some, I loved it when people just came with ingredients and would just come and cook and chat to us, and kind of that was lovely, feeling that support.
Kind of acting normal, just act
yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
Don't tiptoe around, please. Just be normal.
Yeah, just be normal. Yeah,
and helpful.
Yeah, and helpful, and just yeah.
Gather your tribe, I think, is the one. I think you can't do it by yourself, and you're not ultimately responsible. And a lot of it is about surrender.
And that was certainly my word for my, joy, surrender, trust. Yeah, all of those.
Having a like a daily practice, be it yoga or meditation or something, just to kind of remind yourself that it's bigger, it's bigger than just us mere mortals. There's a bigger reality out there, a bigger world. It makes it not less important, but you kind of feel part of something, a greater good, and it kind of you can lose your story a little bit in that. It's kind of
yeah. Ultimately, we're just tiny little bits of the bigger picture, aren't we? And we don't know what the bigger picture is. And I think that's what I kept surrendering to. It's like, well, if I'm meant to die, that's what's going to happen, and I can't control it. But I'd quite like to stay. It was like, I just put that. I kept adding it, but I'd quite like to stay. I feel like I've got stuff to do. So yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely having you both.
yeah.
Feeling that, I mean, you two are sisters, it's like, that's more than friends as well. You can see that there's like real sisterhood, and that support is just vital, and it's really beautiful to be part of that connection with you both. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on, and I know that what you've shared is going to help so many people. So thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you very much.